So Don, if you want to go ahead and get that going, perfect. Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today and welcome to the Limelight and Kount webinar series on e-commerce and fraud. My name is Matthew Abdullah and I'm one of the marketing managers here at Limelight. Today is part 2 in our 6-part series and we'll be talking about the 9 deadly costs of fraud. I'm joined by 2 guests today. The first is Adam Pivko. Adam is the Director of Client Management and Anti-Fraud here at Limelight. Adam has been working with Kount managing merchants' anti-fraud portfolios for over 6 years, ranging from massive telecoms to travel sites, all the way through trial and subscription business model clients. He's found that although the trial and subscription industry is plagued by high chargebacks, merchants do not have the time nor efficient expertise to run and maintain an anti-fraud campaign. Thus, Limelight has launched an in-house managed anti-fraud service for this exact reason. Adam manages Limelight's entire portfolio of anti-fraud merchants, building custom rule sets to combat the fraud they encounter in their business. Our second guest is Don Bush, the VP of Marketing at Kount. Don is an experienced marketing leader who has worked within the technology segment for over 20 years, spanning hardware, software, and other e-commerce industries. As a partner in 2 top technology marketing agencies, Don has led all marketing, media relations, and external communication efforts at Kount, which helps businesses boost sales by reducing fraud. Kount protects some of the world's best-known brands with an all-in-one fraud and risk management solution that functions completely behind the scenes and seamless to the customer while providing comprehensive fraud protection. Adam, Don, thank you very much for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, my pleasure. So if you want to take it away, Don, we'll let you go ahead and get into the slides.
You bet. Thanks again. Glad to be here this morning or this afternoon, wherever you are. Couple of things I would just wanted to add to what Matt said is on your screen there's a place to ask questions. If you've got questions, go ahead and put them in there. We can ask them throughout the webinar or at the end if there's things that you have questions on or need more information on and things like that, feel free to put those in there and we'll try and get to those. Second thing is, as Adam and I have discussed this and this is the series, as much as we can in this setting, we'd like to make this more of a discussion and less of a lecture. We'll present quite a bit of information. Some of it you may be familiar with, some of it you may not be familiar with. What's happening with fraud on the fraud landscape today and how we go about answering those questions and taking fraud out of the way. And here's a question that I like to put out at the very beginning so people think about it. If fraud were not an issue today, how would that change your business? Would you add new products or services? Would you expand to new regions, maybe international geographies? Would you use new sales channels like affiliate channels or other partners? What would you do differently if fraud were not in the mix? And that's really what we try and do. Let's take fraud off your plate. Let's take care of that so it's minimized and let you get back to doing what you got into business to do, and that's to grow your company in several different ways. And so that's why we have the tagline of boost sales and beat fraud. We think those are not opposites. They're all part of the same solution. We can take fraud and minimize its effects to you. We can help you grow your business, and that's really ultimately where we want to go. So let me see. There we go. The costs of fraud. We call this the 9 deadly costs of fraud because there are 9 specific areas that we look at when we start looking at where fraud is in our business. Some of them are visible. Lots of them are less visible. We call them the hidden costs because they're not readily apparent as we start looking at things. We'll talk about manual reviews, do-it-yourself systems, declined orders and canceled orders, lost stolen merchandise, chargebacks, the bane of our existence, right? Chargeback, fees and fines. What happens when we lose our shipping costs, wasted labor, and higher escrow or reserve accounts based on fraud, management of fraud, high-risk areas, which we all deal with on a regular basis. So if that sort of is our agenda, let's get started and start going down the list of where those 9 deadly costs lie. Let's gotta make sure I've got the technology going. There we go. How much does a chargeback really cost you? I know that Limelight does some calculations, and their calculations are almost spot on to the industry. So these are some great numbers. And Adam, I know that these are some numbers that you've looked at and put together. What do you have to say about some of these costs that we see?
What I hear from clients is that although they understand that chargebacks are a major part of their business and managing them appropriately, what they don't always comprehend is all the different line items that are presented on screen right now and how they contribute to their overall costs of chargebacks and really what that total amount of a per chargeback cost really becomes. So I feel by presenting these and kind of breaking them out and how they all add up to such a huge dollar amount on just, let's say, an $89.99 transaction, how total cost of a chargeback equal just short of $225, I think it really opens our clients' eyes and opens the industry's eyes to really saying, hey, you know, preventing chargebacks before they happen saves you a lot of money.
Yeah, I would agree. It's, you know, do we prevent chargebacks or do we handle chargebacks? And in our point of view, we'd rather prevent them. We think prevention is better. But you know, those hidden costs, I put together what I call chargeback math, so to speak. And everybody can do their own math here, but this is just a simple way to show some of the impacts. Yeah, on a $90 chargeback, you could lose $225. But let me show you how that shakes out. Let's say that you're you sell shirts online. Your average cart is about $30. Your gross margin's 30%, which is right in there for some of these things. So you're making about $9 a sale. Well, when you look at the LexisNexis true cost of fraud, they put together some calculations that say if this is an e-commerce transaction, your true cost of that loss is for every dollar, $2.33. It's almost spot on to what Limelight's calculations are for their customers. When you start looking at m-commerce, mobile transactions, that cost can go up pretty significantly based on how people look at it, react to fraud, and manage it. But what that really means to you is for every one order, it will take me somewhere between 8 and 12 sales to make up for the loss that I have there. And to me, I think some people don't look at it that way. And yeah, we lost $225. Well, you got to make another 10 sales to make up for the lost revenue of that single fraud transaction. And put your own numbers in here, do that math, and see how that affects you. I think sometimes, as Adam said, it's surprising. You know, what part of the iceberg are we not seeing and those true costs? This is another area that we often see. You know, there's lots of fraud tools out on the market. You can get IP geolocation tools. You can get device ID tools. You've got folks that have AI out there that'll throw some things your way. But there's a few things you've got to be careful of because they're very hidden costs in fighting fraud. One of them is, do I have the data? In order to fight fraud, you've got to have an immense amount of data. The network effect is what we call it. For instance, we see millions of transactions a day from 180 different countries around the globe, and we've been at that pace for the last decade. That kind of data is what's necessary to run artificial intelligence engines, to get analysis and trending, to look at order linking and things like that. And most online resellers, merchants, retailers just don't have that database. If you're an Amazon or an Apple, you come close, but most people just don't have the wherewithal to do that. The next thing is, how does that data affect my particular business? So I've got to be reasonably accurate in my analysis there. Oftentimes, we see folks employ data scientists and fraud teams to look at these analysis, which comes into another area of costs, because kind of once you build it, you own it. And then the last piece is speed. We've got to have this stuff done in fractions of a second. And what I mean by that is American Express did a study about a year ago that said for every 1 second delay in the approval of an online order, you can see a 7% reduction in order rates. People will cancel pretty quickly if they're not seeing things done very, very, very fast. And we're talking sub-second, fractions of a second, milliseconds, so that you're not disturbing the checkout, the order process. We call it friction-free. Anytime you add friction there, you also add lost sales and dissatisfied customers. Declined orders is another area, and I know that Adam's got some great numbers here. I'm giving you broad averages. This is a North American average. It slightly changes when you go international. In fact, the numbers go up quite a bit. But declining transactions can be very, very costly. In fact, MasterCard says declined transactions, or what they call false positives, are about 12 times more costly than actual fraud. Adam, is that something that you see on your side? I know these are averages across the board, so it goes up and down, but how do you see that on the Limelight system?
Yeah, with us, we're always trying to reduce the amount of false positives. It's a constant give and take with preventing, as much fraud as we possibly can while reducing as much false positives as we possibly can. For the most part, we're hovering in the range of about, with the customized portfolio and having assessed your transaction flows and traffic sources and traffic quality, we're hovering around the 80 to 90% range accuracy. So bringing that actual fraud rate much closer to the average decline rate.
Yeah, and I think especially in your industry, that is something that we have to remember. These numbers, like I said, across the board averages. When you start going to specific industries, they vary quite a bit. And I think, as Adam said, the 80 to 90% accuracy is pretty darn good for what they've put in place. So
yeah, definitely the fraud rate is much higher with certain industry types, and focusing with those and within our client base, we're definitely seeing fraud rates that are significantly higher than just the average across the board of 0.9%.
You bet, without a doubt. And that average bounces from industry to industry. So look at this as a sounding board, and Adam can add more color to the exact numbers for your particular platform. So anyway, declined orders is another area where there's a huge cost in fraud. Most companies put a large buffer there because they are very suspicious of things that even get close to the fraud line, and they would rather decline than get a chargeback. And what we say is, instead of having a decline mindset, we want to have an acceptance mindset, and that makes all the difference in the world when it comes to your bottom line, your profit, and things like that.
Yeah, I try to get my clients to that point. But first and foremost, in most cases, they're coming to me with existing chargeback problems that need to be addressed. And once you
stop the bleeding and then fix it, right?
Exactly.
I think that's great. Canceled orders is another one. Canceled orders comes from a number of different areas. We talked about this. If an order takes too long to be approved, a couple of things will happen. One is your customer will go, "Oh, did I click the button?" And they'll click it again, which causes problems. If they get charged twice, or if they're frustrated with the little hourglass that shows up or the spinning wheel, oftentimes they'll go, just forget it, and they'll leave. 24% of canceled transactions turned out to be false positive. We've actually turned away good customers. And when you think about what it costs to get a customer to that stage, everybody's cost of acquisition, money spent to get a customer to the point of purchase, it can be rather costly to turn away these folks. And sometimes we go, well, let's just put them into a manual review queue, and that's great, but oftentimes, in fact, numbers point out that 9 out of 10 manually reviewed orders ultimately are approved by merchants. So we've added a step and added costs to something that we should have automated, quite frankly.
Yeah, just to add to that, John, I'm typically operating in an automated fashion with the rules. I'm minimizing the amount of manual reviews as much as possible.
We think that's great. Manual review is far overused in the industry. Most of the manual review stuff can be automated if you know what you're doing, like Adam does. But most companies employ it. It's very expensive. It's not terribly consistent. And like I said, 9 times out of 10, the order is approved anyway. So what we've done is just add cost and time and complexity. And to automate that and eliminate it altogether, I think is the best practice in this area. Lost and stolen merchandise is another one of those areas. I think that speaks for itself. You have a $90 product. Your cost of goods on that is X. Your cost of acquisition is Y. We see some of these things happening. More and more now we're seeing multi-channel or omni-channel stores that have online pickup in store. You can see how that's starting to tick fraud up. What tends to happen is once the order is out the door, it's gone, and I have very little recourse in getting that product back. And so it's another area. How much is that costing me? Could be something above the line, could be something below the line as well. This is, I think this is one of the areas that most people are a little bit more familiar. Chargebacks are often the scale that we use to see if we have an issue. Do we have an issue with our fraud? Do we have an issue with how we're transacting? Lost revenue, lost merchandise, increased fines and fees. If you've ever been in an excessive chargeback fine program, you know, we call that the club nobody wants to join. It can be, right, Adam?
Yeah, absolutely. Or the club people were forced to join and desperately want out of.
Yeah, and it's, you know, the fees and fines can be a headache. We've had customers to have fines in excess of $100,000 a month because they couldn't get their fraud under control. It can be a terrible thing to be in. And here's some of the reasons why. When you look at the little chart that I've got here, we call this the chargeback lag. You're getting chargebacks that can go 180 days. So sales you made 6 months ago, you could be seeing the chargeback today. So you get that chargeback and you go, okay, what happened? Well, now I've got to go through an audit process. It happens over the holidays, probably is the worst time to see the chargeback lag. You see an enhanced sales volume in November, December, but you see the chargebacks come back in January, February. So all of a sudden you're in a chargeback program, you're in a fine program because the lag, the delay in getting the chargeback affects everything. And again, we mentioned it earlier, we'd rather see the chargeback not come at all. And this lag makes it even exacerbated in the problem. Is this something that you see, Adam?
Yeah, our clients are always dealing with this lag. They understand the chargeback timeframes very well. There's constant effort to have good transactions to offset the bad ones at all times throughout the chain, so that there is a happy balance amongst their within a merchant account in order to maintain the health and performance and keep it operating smoothly. But there's definitely this trend of delayed or going back, and a lot of our clients run subscription model based businesses, and sometimes the subscriptions, the customers don't like them 3 months in and charge back all the way through. It causes huge problems for them.
And it's interesting, the source of the problem is, I'll be careful how I say this, is the financial entities, the issuers and things like that, and yet we have to deal with it because the lack of efficiency sometimes, or the lack in customer response sometimes, and merchants have to deal with it. So it really makes the problem difficult and almost untenable to work with. And if this is a constant thing, this is an area we want to always keep chargebacks under control. We call this being in chargeback hell. It's rolling that rock uphill.
Yeah, even if you stop doing transactions to let your fraud catch up to you, there's a point where you could even be doing no volume and still be getting chargebacks. I sympathize with that so much.
This is an easy one. When you ship something out, if you have a shippable good, that expense is gone. FedEx and UPS and the Postal Service isn't going to refund that money just because it was fraud. It's a lost expense, and oftentimes that can be both hidden and above the line as well. So shipping costs continually increase. It's one of those things that we use as marketers to try and drive sales as free shipping based on if you're a new customer, certain size of orders, but it can also be an area that we have some risk involved in that as well.
Yeah, just to add to this, you see here a chart explaining the Amazon shipping cost increase. And when I think about Amazon, I think that they're doing that as an in-house, although they may have warehouses everywhere. Many of our clients are using outsourced kind of fulfillment and shipping providers to facilitate getting their products out to their clients. Those expenses, when you outsource them, are really high. So the loss in shipping expense is very great when it comes to how many orders that you've sent out that get charged back or require late refunds and you've already shipped. You're missing out on a lot of shipping cost revenue there.
Yeah, like Adam said, this is just shipping. This doesn't include the handling. And if you're outsourcing, of course, you're getting a handling charge with every transaction as well. So it can be a killer. This is kind of doesn't need to be said, and yet it needs to be said, because manual review, representments, audits, handling customer complaints, if you go through with prosecutions, it's time, and time is money. There's no two ways about it, and whether that's people you have in-house or outsourced. Would you agree, Adam?
Yeah, without a doubt. Again, whether it's in-house or outsourced, if it's an outsourced call center, there's still costs associated with handling those bad customer engagements. And there's still the risk of when you outsource, if the quality on the phones are going to be good enough to get that to a refund stage versus a chargeback stage versus a save the sale or even an upsell stage. So there's costs everywhere when it comes to wasted labor time and dealing with chargebacks and fraud management.
And the problem that we see often from our point of view as a fraud management platform is those costs are in different areas of the business. They're in operations, they're in logistics, they're in payments, they're in losses that goes onto your financial statements. So that's why oftentimes they're hidden. People don't grab those and put them all together and say, gosh, this is what this one lost order cost me. And by doing that math, it really starts to stack up. We've tried not to make this a math class here on a Thursday in the middle of your week, but there's lots of things you can do here to run ratios, to run percentages, to look at your rates. I've got a lot of formulas that we will run with customers on, gosh, manual reviews. Even smaller customers doing 100 transactions a day, an average manual review rate can cost them a couple $100,000 a year. And most of the time when you show that math to folks, they're aghast. And shipping is the same way, and other things that take that time, take that expertise, take that labor, often are shockers when people put paper to pen. This is another area, I call it escrow accounts here. It's often called reserves as well. If you prove to be high risk, if you're already in a high risk area and you prove to be high risk of the high risk, oftentimes processors require reserves. They've got to cover their backs too to make sure that they're not overexposed. It's often called the hidden tax of doing things. It can add an additional 5 basis points per transaction. So merchants with $50 million a year could lose another $45,000 to $140,000 a year just through higher costs.
Totally see this all the time. What I actually think is really worthwhile in mentioning here is that by implementing Kount as an anti-fraud solution, there's plenty of previous experience that I've had working with clients who are in chargeback hell or who are looking to get their reserves reduced by their processing or banks. And by saying that you're employing or using an anti-fraud solution, especially as notable prominent as Kount is, you get a lot of leeway with those processors because they say, hey, you're doing the right thing. Let's support you. They'll sometimes waive fees for a month. They'll sometimes just reduce your reserves and give you a nice lump sum payment out of what they're holding from you. But a lot of times by implementing a solution like this, you can get money back from the bank right away.
Yeah, that's a good point, Adam, and I failed to mention that is we do have people come see us and they're in what we call a 911 or a 999 situation. And we have worked with several acquiring banks. We've worked with several of the card brands. They know that if they've got somebody like us on the case, that it's going to be handled. Fines can be a horrible drain to a business. Fines can range anywhere from $1,000 a month to, like I said, we've had customers that are paying more than $100,000 a month in fines. And the paperwork that goes along with that, the reporting that goes along with that, if they know that you've got somebody like a Kount on your side, oftentimes there's a lot of leeway that can be granted. The one thing about this, the excessive chargeback club, is they own the rules. They own the laying off of the rules if you're trying to do the right thing. So they do have leeway in those sorts of areas. If you're in a chargeback program, I would definitely get a hold of somebody on your team there, and let's work it out. Let's get something going so that you can get you out of the chargeback hell. We've talked an awful lot about math and ratios and things like that. We've actually put together a calculator. We call it the cost of fraud. What's the F word costing you? That F word of fraud. There's lots of places that you can be losing money or have the opportunity to gain money and gain savings and actually increase sales. This calculator is quite in depth. It asks you some questions about average ticket price, your gross margins, transactions volume, manual review rates, declines, return, all those types of things. It asks you all those questions, and then it spits out quite a number of calculations here to show you where we think we could get you some reductions, some savings, and even increase sales. On a regular basis, our customers report they see 2, 3, 4, 5% increase in sales based on accepting transactions that normally they would have declined, or doing things, adding products, expanding their markets and things like that. We think that is a very real area to go when we talk about boosting sales and beating fraud. In the end, with this, it'll actually spit out a 5-page PDF report with all those numbers on it. So it's pretty valuable. Gives you some great feedback, and we use, again, you can put your own numbers in there, and we use some national averages. So it's not dead on, but I think it gives you directionally correct information. Just to kind of wind this down, I wanted to throw out a couple of our case studies and give you some insight on some of this. CD Baby is the largest online distributor of indie music. They're on iTunes, they're on Amazon and other places. They were losing a couple $100,000 a year. And the way that was happening is they were in affiliate channels, as you can imagine, and they had a lot of affiliates signing up, fraudsters signing up as affiliates. They have commissions of up to 75%. So they had fraudsters signing up as music publishers, then they were going in and signing up as affiliates, then they were going back in and buying these music products with stolen credit cards. So they were getting paid as an affiliate, they were getting paid as an owner of the music, and what CD Baby couldn't see is how that all was connected. And so once they put Kount in place, all of a sudden the picture was very clear, and they reduced their losses dramatically. Their chargebacks, their losses, they were in a fine program. And so the visibility is what they were really gave them the advantage when they put that in place. One of Australia's largest online travel services, Webjet, they're sort of the southwest of the EMEA region down there. They saw their chargeback rate drop dramatically as well. They were using a competitor, and they actually ran our service with a competitor service for about 4 months. Not only did they notice their fraud drop dramatically, but they saw their increased rate of acceptance. They saw about a 12% pickup in sales volume because now they could, because of what they could do, what they could see, they were more confident in those transactions. And since then, they've actually opened up a couple of new regions in the South Africa area, where they were always worried to go to market there just because of the fraud rates. And again, like I said earlier, if fraud wasn't an issue, what would you add to your business? What would you do? The last one here is ClickBank. I think you're all familiar with ClickBank. They're a unique marketplace. They are large in the industry. It's actually where Kount was born and bred. What they saw with fraud was incredible. Because of their digital markets, their digital products, fraudsters hit those areas pretty hard. Digital products see about twice as much fraud as physical goods. And so putting our product together with them and running it basically for about 5 years before we went to market gave us great insight. And I'll give you a little bit of a fun statistic. Last year, 2016, maybe it was 2015. I've got to look at it again. But 2015 or 2016, Kount flagged $46 million worth of fraud from the ClickBank system in that 12-month period. Out of that $46 million, the bank actually approved about $13 million in fraudulent transactions. So just because a bank approves it doesn't mean it's not a fraudster trying to steal from you. And I went back to, I know the CEO at ClickBank, and I called Edward and I said, hey, what would 13 million cost your business? And he said, that would have taken away, a huge chunk of their gross profit and operating, and it would have caused them to do all kinds of things to try and make up for the loss. So when you think about that, it's just a really big deal. When you open up the visibility into what you can see, it allows you to do things that you've never been able to do before. That's where we come back and we talk about the boosting sales and beating fraud. I don't know if you've got anything else to add, Adam, before we go to Q&A?
I just think, with regards to ClickBank in the space and just the amount of data that they were generating about e-commerce transactions, I think it really gave Kount the foundation of that data that you were talking about earlier in the presentation, of how important it is to have so much data driving the platform and making good decisions in order to be most accurate, have the best persona linking, best device fingerprinting, all combined into one, backed by data to say, hey, it's a good transaction or a bad transaction to take. I just really like that ClickBank's involvement in the growth of Kount.
Yeah, it's funny. We use the analogy that 150 years ago, if you want to know what the weather was, you stood outside and looked. And, if you're a farmer, it was either windy or it was raining or whatever. You might be able to see some clouds on the horizon. Then the barometer was invented and people could go, hey, the pressure's changing, that means this. And then a weather balloon was used, and then satellites, and now we can look at weather 30 days out. We're pretty good at it. It's the same type of thing with fraud. The better visibility you have, the better decisions you can make, and the better decisions usually means more profits and more accepted orders as you go through.
Couldn't agree more.
So one of the things that I had a question for you, Adam, and might be helpful here is, if somebody comes to you and says, I think I have a fraud problem, I'm not sure, what do I do next?
Oh, wow. There's so many different aspects and places within the business that fraud problems can stem from. I would definitely like to hone that in terms of understanding not only the balance that they're seeing in their business with regards to friendly fraud versus hard fraud and that kind of space, but also just understanding what tolerance they have or what they currently have in place for preventing fraud, whether it even be as simply as on a gateway level, implementing CVV or AVS checks, just understanding the foundations and what they see as fraud, what they're counting to their business of fraud, what their actual fraud losses are, who's saying that they have the fraud, is it the banks or is it themselves, is it their finance team, just really understanding the whole landscape of their business before going ahead and saying, hey, I have a solution for you.
It's a great way to do it, kind of consultative rather than go, you have a nail, I have a hammer. I think oftentimes, it's been my experience, we go and do our fraud series. We do about 25 cities a year internationally. We see thousands of merchants, and oftentimes we see very blunt instruments used to try and stop fraud. And I make the joke is, hey, anybody can stop fraud, just stop taking orders, right?
Yeah, decline every transaction. You'll get zero
and you don't have a
chargebacks.
fraud problem. Don't have a fraud problem anymore, right?
Yeah, right.
And everybody laughs and they go, oh, yeah, of course. And then I say, all right, who sells to Nigeria? No hands go up. And I said, well, why don't you sell to Nigeria? Oh, there's a lot of fraud there. So basically what you did is said, we're turning off our e-commerce to Nigeria because there's too much fraud. And everybody's eyes and heads kind of shake and go, you're right. We are turning off sales. And what we say is, open the floodgates. If you can sell legally in that country, if you've got delivery mechanisms, if it's not, one of those countries in OFAC that you can't sell to because of legal issues, fraud is stopping you. Let's get fraud under control and allow you to sell the way you'd like to sell, and see what that does.
That's a great way to put it. I really like that.
Cool, excellent. Well, now we can open it up to any questions. I don't think I've seen any come in yet or seen any hands raised, but if anybody has any questions to direct towards Adam or Don, this would be a great time to ask them. You can either type them in the chat now or into the questions section, and we'll be happy to take a minute here to answer any inquiries anybody has.
And Matt, sometimes people don't want to ask the questions online, but if they have a question, you've got my contact information there. You've got Adam's contact information there. Sometimes questions are very specific to a business, and happy to take those one-off as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to email me just about anything.
Yeah, and tomorrow we'll have a recording of this webinar available. It'll be emailed to you as well as the slide presentation. So if you want to share it, distribute it with anybody you know, anybody you think that this would be a good presentation for them to see and hear, it will be available to them soon. So it looks like I'm not seeing any questions yet, but we can take another couple seconds here to see if any more come in. Otherwise, we can kind of close this down. Oh, it looks like here we go. So Adam, this is a good question for you. How does Kount integrate with Limelight CRM?
I would say Limelight CRM integrates with Kount. I would say very thoroughly. We have ongoing improvements to that integration. We're constantly working on it, and I'm getting feedback from clients to say, hey, there's even more rooms for improvement in data that we are keeping in Limelight, but the integration's already done. Very simple configuration process you can find by going to help.limelightcrm.com and searching for configuring Kount. It's a very simple setup that, if you're a client with me, I take you through right on the first day, getting that done in a matter of 2 minutes. From there, there's one other piece that I really encourage our clients to go through, which is device fingerprinting. It's implementing a pixel on the checkout page, which is also done in typically under a half hour by a relatively good developer on your squad. But from that, most of the heavy lifting has been done by Limelight already. We even pass campaign ID, affiliate ID, gateway ID, sub-affiliate ID, all the way through to Kount to give us some really cool level reporting, such as, what's the average score, the average Kount score that an affiliate is generating for you. Many of my clients are absolutely loving that report. So yeah, I would say it's very thorough, easily done, very quick.
Yeah, I love the way that the integration has gone because it takes the IT hassle pretty much out of the picture. Limelight's done the heavy lifting, and so within a matter of minutes you're up and running. So they've done a really good job with that.
I have a follow-up question, Adam. I don't know if you'll be able to answer this one, but it is, can clients go through Mitigator to utilize Kount services?
Sure. So I've had that question before. There's a couple different ways that we can leverage that. One of the good things about Mitigator and the integration with Limelight there is that if you're receiving chargebacks in Mitigator, you can also be reporting them directly into Limelight. And a simple checkbox in the Kount configuration within Limelight is we're reporting chargebacks directly through to Kount. So that's kind of closing the loop from mitigator chargebacks all the way into the Kount system directly through Limelight with a simple checkbox. With that being said, if you're not using Limelight platform and you're interested in getting Kount services, I'd still be more than interested in talking with you and perhaps working with you on a campaign.
Excellent. Those are two great questions. Thank you for those, Fareed. Looks like I don't see any more questions coming in. So like Don mentioned, if you do have any questions you'd like to address to either any one of us personally, feel free to send us an email after this or respond to the follow-up email that you'll receive after this webinar. Adam, Don, thank you very much for your time. I definitely appreciate it and learned a lot from this.
Thanks. Appreciate being on it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And thank you, everyone, for attending. If you have any questions, feel free to direct them to us. Otherwise, we hope to see you soon on part 3 of our webinar, which will be about tackling checkout abandonment. And that'll be in 2 weeks on April 20th at the same time. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. And thank you, Ben, and thank you, Don.